Hey, everybody, this is Tom Sega with Duluth Pack, and this is the Duluth Pack podcast, Leader of the Pack. Our leader today, our special guest, is Jora Bart. Jora has an awesome pedigree, is the word I'll use, Jora. But first of all, welcome.
Thank you so much. I feel like I need to do some growl for being leader of the pack, but I won't. I won't embarrass myself yet.
You know, you can smoke some heaters and draw it on down, bring it on down if you want, and be a DJ for an hour here.
Love
But,
it.
you know, Jora, we want to talk all about you, but I want to let our guests know that, you grew up in a family business, that you started as a senior account executive for the Minnesota Wild. How cool is that? And then from there, you decided to, hey, let's get out of here and go over to Hong Kong for a while. So that'll be really interesting. You came back, and then you're in public and media relations at the Xcel Energy Center and Roy Wilkins Auditorium, and then on to School of Rock. So let's go forward, I guess, and go back to the beginning and find out all about you. Where did you grow up? Where'd you go to school? What was your childhood like?
Oh, I love it. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And man, after hearing my life story there, I feel tired. I don't know how I did all that, but yeah. So I grew up in real small town Minnesota, which I think a lot of people can relate to. I grew up in Corcoran, so like right now it's right next to Maple Grove. It's kind of on the cusp of becoming, those bigger suburbs. But yeah, I grew up in a family business. My family owned a golf course. So my grandpa and his two brothers, when they were in their 40s, bought their family farmland in Plymouth, turned that into a golf course. It did really well. And so then they bought some land in Corcoran and opened up a second golf course. So my grandpa and his two brothers actually owned Hollydale Golf Course and Shamrock Golf Course and operated those for 70 years. And my family there was a farmhouse on Shamrock Golf Course. We converted it into our house. So we grew up on a farm that, all the sheds stored golf carts and tractors and machinery. And so, yeah, as a 6-year-old, learned how to drive a golf cart and never looked back after that. So I come from a family, I have 3 siblings, and all 4 of us worked at the family business from the time we could reach the pedals on the golf cart. So, which I think also is just something that now as a parent, I have 3 kids that I really want to instill in them, is that work ethic. I think that, and this, I'm sure, coming from a family business, but there's no better way to teach work ethic than to be in a family business, because you see your parents and how hard they work, you see your grandparents and how hard they work, and you want to make them proud. And so you're there right alongside of them, and there's no off time, right? Like my parents, my dad started working at the golf course when he was 19 years old. He picked rocks on the old family farm, so they could get it ready to lay sod and grass and turn it into the golf course. And then he worked until he just retired last year at 69. So 60 years he worked in the golf course business. Yeah. And he worked from sun up till sundown every single day, 7 days a week, all summer, all spring. He'd have a couple months off in the winter, and then spring would roll around again and they'd be up and at him again. So really was able to model what hard work was after looking at my parents. And my mom worked in the family business as well, helped out inside with the customers. And so, yeah, my first job was parking golf carts, loading the pot machines, cleaning the bathrooms, taking out the garbage. And we'd make I think $5 or $6 to do that. And then we just buy candy bars with it from the golf course. So it went right back into the business anyway.
So, Jora, are you an awesome golfer?
You know what? You'd think so. But I always tell people, when I was a kid, there was a set of golf clubs on one side, and then there was a golf cart on the other side. So you're like, which one do I want to do? And it was always more fun to grab that golf cart and go whip around on the course and get your friends on there and tool around, go in the woods. We used to go in the woods with golf carts. I don't know how we didn't wreck more golf carts. I mean, we did wreck a few, but we had a blast. But yeah, I can hit a really long drive, because we used to tee up golf balls and see if we could hit them over the barn. And so I can hit them really far. They go every direction. And another fun fact about my golf game is that I grew up barefoot running around the golf course. And so when I got into my 20s and I actually like started golfing with my job at the Minnesota Wild, I was like, hold on, I'm going to have to take my shoes off because I can't seem to golf with my shoes on. And people are like, who are you, you hillbilly? Like, get out of here. But no, my golf game, it's funny because my dad, my brother, my sisters, like none of us are really good golfers. And I think part of that has to do though with too is that we all worked so much at the course that when you weren't working, you were like, I don't really want to be golfing. You know, I kind of want to go do something else. And so it's really, and I mentioned earlier that my dad finally retired last year at 69. And our whole lives, like we worked all summer long. We never went to cabins. We never knew the cabin life. And so now in retirement, my parents finally bought a cabin. So we're all like, all right, it's going to be cabin season finally. And so it's kind of a really cool next chapter for them. But yeah, it was the best childhood ever. Like I'd roll out, you know, and I always said, I've worked a lot of amazing jobs where the people that are out there to have a great time. People are out at the golf course, they're there to have fun. You know, when I worked for the Wild, people were there to have a blast. When I worked for Xcel Energy Center, people were there to see shows. They were all there to have fun. So I've really lucked out in that aspect where the people that I'm dealing with, you know, the clientele, were always really happy to be there. So I worked up those ranks as a kid, you know, started parking carts. My next job, I was the bev girl, you know, drove around the beverage cart in the summertime, like the best summer job ever, getting a tan, selling beers, making tips. And then even when I went to college, St. Mary's in Winona, Minnesota, and I got a degree in communications and public relations focus and a minor in business. Even throughout all those years, I always worked at the family business. I always worked every single Sunday behind the counter alongside my sisters and my parents and my brother, who was a greenskeeper out there. And then all the way up until I like to say I retired when I was 40 years old. I finally stopped working on Sundays because my other jobs were really busy too. And I'm like, I'm working 7 days a week. And once I started, you know, my kids were, you know, 2 and 3 and life was really crazy. I'm like, I got to retire from at least one job in my life. So it was a really good run and we had a blast having a family business. And that was something that also is really interesting too, is the navigation of the succession process, because my grandpa and his brothers, and you can probably appreciate this as a family business, but my grandpa and his brothers, as they divided their businesses into their kids. So like my dad and his 3 siblings took over one of the golf courses, and then the other uncle, his kids took over that business. The other uncle actually didn't have children. And then my dad ended up buying out his siblings so that he could run one golf course fully on his own. And when the time came and my dad just started saying, hey, this is just really hard, you know, like when I was 30, 40, you know, even 50, I could work 80 hours a week. But it's real manual labor in addition to all of the management that he was doing. And so we said to him, Dad, it's okay. Like if you want to retire, like we're going to support that. And we had a lot of conversations about if any of the siblings wanted to take it over. I have an older brother and then 2 younger sisters, and we were all in our 30s and 40s with families and careers of our own. And we had seen a lot of struggles with my dad's, you know, with my grandpa and his brothers and doing business as family. And I think we all decided as a family, like, hey, we all really like each other. And we know that running a family business can bring a lot of just a lot of different struggles and a lot of conversations and a lot of, you know, things that maybe we're not really interested in doing. We're like, we just kind of want to let you guys close this chapter on your life. It's been amazing. It's afforded us all to like really grow into our own careers, and we'll always be grateful for that. But we were ready to close the chapter and move on. And I think any family business that figures out a way to work together and to still respect each other and to get along and have like the business, but then also have the personal life, it's such a beautiful thing. And I always am just in awe of those people, because it's hard work and it's always something you need to work at. And so yeah, I think that that's something that I really learned throughout that. And now as I'm in my new stage and I am running my own business and I'm running it with my husband, I've learned a lot along the way on how to navigate that path too. So
that's that's a lot of good advice you just gave for people who are in business, people who are going to be in business with siblings and kids and parents and all that, because it is not the easiest thing in the world to navigate. And when you're in a family business, it's a lot of hard work. People think that, well, you own the place, so it's just, easy skating for the siblings. And no, the bar seems to be raised a lot higher for the children of the entrepreneurs when they do start working in the business.
Yeah.
So you graduate college.
Yeah.
And you're going to get into the workforce more than just the golf course. So you're doing that, you're moonlighting at that. But come on, as a hockey fan, how do you get a job with the Minnesota Wild, for crying out loud?
I know this is my little dirty secret. Don't tell anybody, but I never grew up playing hockey. I went to a really small high school that didn't have a hockey team. So for me to get a job with a hockey team was like a fish out of water. But let me tell you, I'm so glad they took a chance on me. But again, I go back to that, I knew I loved working at the golf course and that feeling of working with people that were there to have a good time. So when I graduated, there were two industries that I was interested in. One was travel, because that's my biggest passion in life is traveling and music, those two things. And so I'm like, if I could work in the travel industry, that would be one dream job. The other one would be to work in sports and entertainment, because I was super passionate about music. And I knew the sports world was really exciting. So just from the get-go, when I got out of college, I just started making calls to people and connections. And honestly, it was super grassroots at the time. The world was a different place back then. This was a long time ago, in the late 90s. And you actually had to pick up the phone and call people, and email was pretty new. And I know, right? The World Wide Web, who even knew what that was? But it was a lot of, and this is another thing that I learned early on and that I continue to kind of embrace, is just meeting different people, making connections. You never know when those connections are going to come into play or will be something that will guide you into that next chapter of your life, or be that connector that you need to get you into that next level of your career. So honestly, I just started reaching out to, sports teams in Europe and different leagues in Europe, and all the different sports teams in Minnesota, minor league, major league. My mom actually, this is how Minnesotan it is. My mom's best friends, a family friend of theirs that went to their church, had a daughter that worked at the Minnesota Wild. I don't even know if you could follow that, because I could barely follow it. But I said, "Oh, you have a connection at the Wild? Do you think she'd meet me?" And yeah, let's just ask her. So her name is Kelly McGrath. She's actually still currently the marketing director at the Xcel Energy Center, and was my professional mentor for the last 20 years. So she was that person that I met who had the open heart to say, yeah, I'll meet with this young new college grad. And she met me inside the arena. I walk into Xcel Energy Center. My eyes just get as big as like tennis balls. And I'm like, this is your office? Like, this is amazing. And she sat for the next 45 minutes. We sat in the empty arena, and she told me about what she did and what the Minnesota Wild organization was about, and the different roles that were, that the organization had, all of which, of course, were filled at the time. And I just said, this is phenomenal. If anything ever opens up, please keep me in mind. And she did, when a job opened up, and I kept in touch with her too. So I sent her a thank you every month. I'd reach out, hey, how's it going? Don't forget about me. I really want to work with you. Did I tell you how nice you look today? All those sort of things. And then that moment came where she reached out and said, hey, here's an opportunity to work in the season ticket side of our business. If it's something that you're interested in, it's more customer service focused. I know that you were a communications major, but it's a great way to get your foot in the door. And I jumped at the chance. And before I move on, the one thing that I learned from that I took with me my whole life is that always make time for the people that are reaching out to you, right? Because you never know what kind of impact you can have on their life in that small moment. So my whole career at the Wild and at Xcel Energy Center, anytime somebody reached out, whether they were new into the working world or whether they had been in the working world a long time, they were still in college, if somebody reached out and said, hey, I'd love to hear about what you do. Absolutely. When do you want to get together? And I like to think that maybe I made a difference in some people's lives the way that Kelly did, because it really was a life-changing moment for me. So I went into that interview along with 350 other applicants, which at the time was a lot. And I mean, now there's probably thousands of people that apply for jobs, but went in, felt great about it, ended up getting the job. But what I found out later is that what they did is they interviewed everybody. And when you're interviewing for a role with the Wild, they get a lot of really great applicants. And so they said it's sometimes hard for us to decipher like who would be a better fit. So what they did is they actually went down to the front desk and asked the receptionist, who do you remember most from the interviews that came in? Who really like took the time to get to know you? Who made an impact on you when they came through? And so that was it. That's what got me the job at the Wild, was probably my nervous energy as I came in for the interview and chatted the receptionist's ear off. So I worked for the Minnesota Wild for 5 years on the season ticket side of things, made a ton of great connections, learned a lot about hockey along the way. I also learned that Minnesota hockey fans love to talk about hockey. So if I was ever in an instance where I was talking to a season ticket holder and I had no idea what they were talking about, I'd just say, tell me more. I know. I can't believe that. And they'll just tell you all about the game the night before and how they feel about the team. And so I learned a lot from the Minnesota Wild fans. And it was when the team was really new. And I don't know if you remember that year that we made it 3 rounds in the playoffs as like a brand new team. And honestly, it was, no pun intended, like the wildest ride I've ever had at a job in my life. Like, we were a small team of people at the time. I think there were 3 of us working on the season ticket accounts and getting tickets out to people, making sure they had. And I remember telling people in round 1, hey, we're just making you pay for your round 1 tickets. We're probably not going to make it that far, but hey, we're in the playoffs. Isn't this great? Then we get to round 2, like, sorry to even ask you to pay for these tickets because we're probably not even going to need them. Then we make it to round 2. Then we make it to round 3. And I mean, we were working like around the clock. We never left the arena for like a month. We were sleeping there. We had cots set up. We watched all of the away games as like a staff. It was just an incredible time. And all of those people that I worked with really, are lifelong friends that we had a total blast. And so, and my time with the Wild was phenomenal. And then I got to a point, I was a millennial before millennials hit. And I was all of 25 years old and looking at my life and going, geez, is this all I'm going to do with my life? Am I going to be here forever? Like, I just feel like the world is such a big place and I should be doing other things. And what do I really want to do with my life? And I had this like really quarter life crisis, I like to call it.
Quarter life crisis. That's a new one for you. You already had the dream job, for crying out loud. You're working with a professional hockey team, the Minnesota Wild, in the state of hockey.
I know, right? And I was like, is this what I'm going to do? And I think I just had this restless spirit. And I was like, I have to make a change. I'm going to do it right now. And so I ended up connecting with one of my season ticket holders who and I reached out to him on a whim and just said, hey, I know you run your own business internationally, and I'd love to go work abroad. And I really want to work in Europe. I had studied abroad when I was in college in Italy and fell in love with Europe and traveled all around and really wanted to spend some time there. And he said, well, I don't know about Europe, but I just opened up an office in Hong Kong and I'm looking for somebody to do some communications work for me over there, to really be a liaison between my Stillwater office and my Hong Kong office. And what do you think? And I was like, no way, not interested. Never thought about going to Asia. I don't want to do it. And he's like, hey, you know what? It's like, let me fly you over there. You can meet with my team over there, see what you think. If you like it, awesome, we'll talk. If you don't, consider it a paid vacation. Again, this was like when the economy was really good in the early 2000s. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm 25. I'll go to Hong Kong. Cool. And I flew over there, and it was a paper company. And so they sold all their products through Target and Walmart in locally in the States, but then they got a lot of their production done in mainland China and had moved into India, but were officed out of Hong Kong. And I flew over there for a week, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the culture and the people. And there was one person over there from the Minnesota office, and all the rest of the staff, which there was maybe like 15 or 20, were all from Hong Kong and mainland China. So it was the first time in my life that I had ever traveled somewhere where I didn't look like everybody else. Like I looked different. The language was different. It was such a fish out of water, but I just loved it. And the people were just so accepting and phenomenal. And so, yeah, so I put in my notice with the Wild, which everyone was like, what are you doing? State of hockey, like you said, you're working for the hockey team in Minnesota. Like, how could you leave? And I just thought, how could I not take this opportunity? And really for me, because I was such a free spirit, I like to say, and I did a lot of things on a whim back then. Like I used to manage bands and like travel all around whenever I felt like it. But I asked my mom, I said, hey, I've got this opportunity to leave the Wild and go work for another company in Hong Kong. And I thought for sure she'd be like, you're nuts. What are you thinking? This is just another crazy idea. And she said, you should do it. I think this is amazing. I think it's such a cool opportunity and you have to do it. And so I was like, wow, like I have to do it. Like I wasn't the reaction I thought I would get. And so from that moment on, I knew that was the next right step for me. And so I moved everything. So I spent a couple weeks in Stillwater, like getting to know the business, because for going from hockey to paper is a huge jump. And even just to say, like, to figure out what my role was going to be, it was going to be a brand new role. I'm really helping the two offices communicate. I didn't speak any Mandarin or Cantonese, so I wasn't going to be any help there. But figuring out what the people in Minnesota really needed from me as that liaison over there. So I spent, like 2 to 3 weeks in Minnesota. And then I was going to fly to Hong Kong for another 2 weeks to just scout the office there, get to meet those folks. So I packed a bag for 2 weeks and I got on the plane. And then when I landed in LA, they said, you know what? We're just going to have you stay out there. You're not going to come home in 2 weeks. I was like, what? I did not pack enough clothes for this. So flew me out there and I lived in a hotel on Hong Kong Island for probably 2 months before I found my accommodations and made a life out there for a year. And it was amazing, but it was also the hardest year of my life. I was out there by myself. I didn't have any family or friends. I didn't speak the language, working for a company that, all of the folks there were from mainland China and Hong Kong, and trying to navigate their culture and how they communicated with each other and even hung out outside of the office. Like it was really hard. I did a lot of soul searching. I did a lot of traveling by myself. I fell in love though with the culture. I fell in love with a totally different business that I never knew that I could love, paper, and going to different factories and seeing how things are produced, and just the amount of work that goes into creating products that, we as consumers really take for granted. And I mean, especially like I think about companies like yours too, where that's like the coolest part of the story is like seeing how things are created and the people that are doing it and the work that goes into it to give you that product is really, really interesting. So I love that whole year, but about 9 months in, I'm like, all right, you know what? My restless spirit is settled and I think I'm ready to go back to Minnesota. And I feel like I could put down roots now. Like I lived in Europe for a while and studied abroad. I lived in Asia. I feel like my wild side is kind of behind me. So I actively started reaching back out to my friends at the Wild to just say, hey, at the year mark, I'm probably going to be coming back, and I'd love to come back if there's an opportunity. And you'll never guess who came back in the picture again. My friend Kelly McGrath. And
Jora, before we go there, let's talk about Hong Kong a little bit more. What, from a personal professional growth part of your life, can you talk a little bit about that? Because you said, I'm going to a place where the culture is completely new to me. The language I don't speak, and I had to do a lot of soul searching. I did a lot of traveling alone. Where did you travel, and what did you learn, and how did you grow from that experience for our listeners?
Yeah, I would say people can probably relate to this if you're from Minnesota, that you grow up with this network of people around you, which is such a blessing. A lot of people live near family. You've grown up with the same people your whole life. And so to go from that support system to this new place was just so vastly different than anything I was used to. And I got there, and I considered myself to be very outgoing and a very adventurous person. And I found myself going, wow, is that really who I am? Because right now I feel really scared, and I'm not loving this like I thought I would. And so it really forced me to get out of my comfort zone and say, okay, you're here for at least a year. What are we going to do? So I really just dove into, like, I joined a language course and met a couple people that way. So it was people, they call them expats, that are from all over, different countries coming to Hong Kong. All the expats were taking music courses or language courses together. Through that, I met a gal who was like, oh, I'm joining the rugby team. I'm like, rugby? Why not? So I had played a little bit of rugby in college, as a social aspect. So I joined a rugby league there, and that helped me meet a few more people. And then through the rugby team, I met some other people that did rowboating, and so I'd never done that before. So I took up some dragon boating in my time over there and joined a dragon boat team and met a bunch of other people. And so it really, I would say that's what helped me the most, is really to just put myself out there, join things that I wasn't familiar with and comfortable with a bunch of other people that were in my same boat. And so that's that common factor that you have. And then, you start to make friends, and the people that I met there are still my friends today. Like, we are, through social media, which is phenomenal. I see that my friends that are still there living. I made a really great friend from Australia, who was also part of a family business, and he would travel to Hong Kong and mainland China to get hotel things sourced, like silverware and random things. And he flew to Minnesota for my wedding when we got married. So I met a lot of really great people. And so I had that aspect of having those connections. But then even with that, I still found myself with a lot of time by myself. And so that's where I was able to really just like look inward and say, all right, like, who are you? Like, these are really deep questions, but ones that I think a lot of people at some point in their life, struggle with, and say, who are you? And like, what do you really want to do with your life? And what really makes you happy? And what are you passionate about? And what drives you to get up in the morning? What do you want to be doing in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years? And so it was a lot of time asking Jora, hey, Jora, what do you think about this? And so I started to travel a lot by myself, and I went to Thailand, and I went to Bangkok, and I went to, my favorite place was this, it was called Macau. It was the Vegas of Asia. So it had been, run by the British Empire, and then had gone back to Chinese rule when I was there. And so it was filled with casinos, had a blast out there. I went to mainland China all the time, different cities there. I would just take the train in. It was like a 45-minute train ride to get into mainland China. So I'd go all the time, and I had made some friends within my company that were from Hong Kong. So like, they were kind of my travel guides and spoke the language. And, but yeah, so when I got done with that year, I had really spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and settling down was part of it, because I knew I wanted to have a family, and I knew I wanted to put my roots in Minnesota, and I knew I loved sports and entertainment. So that's kind of like Hong Kong helped me realize that, yeah, I was going to spend the rest of my life pretty much working for the same company in sports entertainment, which is what scared me when I was 25, but ended up that 1 year really was the reflection I needed to be like, yep, this is what you were meant to do. This is where you find the most joy.
You found that out at a pretty young age. I think it takes a lot of people a lot longer, but it took you to go to the other side of the world,
Yeah.
to be by yourself a lot to figure that out, is what it
Yeah.
seems, which is really cool.
Yeah. It was a really neat experience. And yeah, I think too, I see a lot of people now too in my life that are in their 40s and 50s that are still like, oh, I don't like my job, or I don't, and it's like, man, you have one life to live. That's it, one. And it goes by real fast, especially as you get older. Like when you're young, what's the saying? It's like I don't know what it is, but anyway, the time flies, and especially when you're older. And so to do anything that you don't love, unless you absolutely have to, like I'm a true proponent for people to like put themselves out there and to say, let's make a change. Like, it's okay. Like, it's scary, but you can do it. People do it all the time, and you can do it. And don't let any more time slip away saying that you don't love what you're doing.
I couldn't agree more. You have to love what you do because you're going to do it a lot. It takes up a lot of your life. And as you said, when you're young, time goes slower. As you get older, it speeds up and speeds up and speeds up, and time goes, and you might as well enjoy what you do every day because you spend a lot of time doing it. So in that year of reflection, you said that you reached back out to your old mentor, and I think it has something to do with this thing called hockey here. I'm just being a little biased, and you end up coming back.
Yeah, so I reached back out to my friend Kelly McGrath, and she said, hey, interesting timing. She's like, I actually just transitioned from the Minnesota Wild side of the business to the concert side of the business, because the concert side of the business at that time was still a real small portion of who we were as an organization, but they wanted to grow it. And so she said, we're building a team, and maybe that'd be a good fit for you. And I said, you know what? Music has always been my passion. I had managed bands in my early 20s as a booking agent for fun on the side when I worked at the Wild. And so I said, yeah, I'd love to chat. So we did some Skype interviews back then and ended up setting it up that I was going to come back and work for the Xcel Energy Center. So as their public and media relations coordinator. So for the people that don't know, it's the umbrella company is Minnesota Sports and Entertainment. Underneath that is the Minnesota Wild hockey team, which everybody knows and loves. There's also St. Paul Arena Company. So that's the managing company of the arena. Inside that is Xcel Energy Center. So it's a team of people that's about 5 or 6 people that work on marketing and PR that promote all the other events that come through Xcel Energy Center that aren't Minnesota Wild hockey. So yeah, I was really blessed to do that for 14 years. That's how I got connected with Duluth Pack, who I just love you guys. We did a lot of different projects for doing some really cool gifts for the artists that came through, and really made an impact on them when they came through to get that homemade gift from Minnesota from a really cool company. Yeah, I was thinking about it. I have this, I saved every single backstage pass from when I worked the concerts. I know, isn't that sad? And also kind of cool. And I put them on the back of my door at my office. And so when I ended up leaving to open up School of Rock, I spent 2 hours peeling off those stickers and putting them in a notebook. I'm like, I'm going to do something with that someday. And I actually laid them all out on a big canvas. And now it's this beautiful piece of artwork up at my School of Rock. But I love looking at it and going, that's 14 amazing years of my life right up there. And you can point to one of the sticky passes up there and say, oh, tell me about that Tom Petty concert. And I have a story from every single sticky pass up there. And I love to talk about those days, because those were the days that, I really loved what I was doing. I was on an incredible team of people that I just adored, and we worked really well together. I worked over 300 different events throughout the course of 14 years, which actually doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. And yeah, I had an absolute blast doing that. And the only reason I left that is really because, the next chapter of my life had started. And after I had my third child, I was still working a lot of nights and weekends. That's the thing. Like, people always say, oh, your job is so amazing. And, you get to do so many cool things. And I'd always be like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, I get to go to every concert, whether or not I want to.
Exactly. That, it's like, oh, you lucky dog, you got to go to those concerts. Yeah, alone, and I'm working, so I don't see the whole concert. But before we move on to School of Rock, what were your responsibilities in your positions when you were working the music part of the Xcel?
Yep. So my role was to promote all of the events with the local media. So I created a lot of great relationships with the local radio stations and TV stations, print publications, online publications, to really promote all the events that came through the arena. So making sure people knew Tom Petty was coming, that tickets were for sale, or Madonna or Adele or whoever was coming through, but then also promoting college hockey, high school sports, Disney on Ice, any figure skating that came through, rodeos. And that was just an Xcel Energy Center. I also focused my PR efforts at the Roy Wilkins Auditorium. So we had the Minnesota Roller Girls were there. We had a lot of concerts come through there, but then we also managed the St. Paul River Center. So which actually is where I had the most fun, I think, sometimes when I worked there, because we would promote the dog shows and the cat shows and the ice fishing shows, and really get to work with those clients and help them promote their events with the local media. I did a ton of live shots, waking up at 3 a.m. to meet the TV crews and, talk about ice fishing, or like my favorite, there was a water skiing squirrel that would always come for the sportsman show, Twiggy, just hilarious. So that's honestly where I had a lot of my favorite memories are from my days working to promote the events that came through St. Paul River Center. But of course, you can't beat when your job is, working with the crews from Adele's camp and Tom Petty and, Roger Waters and Fleetwood Mac. And I mean, any artist you can name, that I'm sure they came through Xcel Energy Center. And when they came to town, it was really about me making sure that they knew where they were. They were at Xcel Energy Center in St. Paul. We'd give them a gift to make sure that they remembered our building, because, Minnesota has 2 different venues that they can choose from. So we want to make sure that when they're coming back into town, that they picked St. Paul for their venue. I worked with the local media, when like the Star Tribune or Pioneer Press would come down, make sure that their reviewers were taken care of, that they had everything they needed. And if any of the TV stations were coming down to get footage to show to their viewers later that night. So it was a lot of time spent in the backstage of buildings, which I'd love to say it was like the Motley Crue days. I remember when I was a kid, I watched a Motley Crue. I know this is also questionable childhood, but I watched a Motley Crue video and I remember seeing like a backstage scene, and they were in a limo with a hot tub, and they were just, and so I'll never forget when Motley Crue came through Xcel Energy Center. I was ready for that hot tub limo, and I'm like, oh, there's no hot tub limo, and it's just them in their rooms, just, old cranky men sitting there, like, what's going on?
So who was it? We won't get into the worst ever, but who was your favorite ever artist that came through that you just were like, this person's really great?
There's so many, but I'll pick 2 stories. I've mentioned Tom Petty a lot because that one just always sticks in my head. But when Tom Petty came through, we had a fan reach out to us. And so I did a lot of work with that. Like if people were interested in meeting the band. And this woman, her friends had reached out and said, our friend was in a Tom Petty cover band when she was younger. She now has cancer. She's, in hospice. She's really, really sick. She has tickets to see this show. It's probably going to be the last thing that we get to do together. And is there any way we can make it extra special for her? And so I said, I want to. Yes, let's make it happen. I forwarded it to the tour. And I will tell you that 99 times out of 100, I never hear back from the tour, because I would always ask the tours, like, hey, do you want to visit Children's Hospital? They're just a couple blocks up the road. And I would just never hear back. And I think, I don't know if it ever actually made it to the artists themselves, but it would kind of get to their tour manager and then it would just sort of stop there. But with Tom Petty's people, they reached back out and said, absolutely, he would love to meet her. Let's make it happen. So she actually came to the show with doctors because she was so sick, and her friends. We set him up for dinner. They had a really amazing dinner. And then we brought him backstage. And I was just a fly on the wall for this moment, but it still is just made such an impact with me that Tom Petty came in. He came in with the entire band, all of the Heartbreakers, and he walked right up to that woman and he just gave her the most beautiful embrace you'd ever seen. He just hugged her so tightly and he was stroking her face and he was whispering in her ear. And I always say, like, if you were just viewing it from the outside and you had no idea what was going on, you would think that it was his sister or his, very good friend, because he was just so wonderful and just in the moment with her. And he actually thanked her for letting him be a part of that moment in her life. And I know it was just amazing. Like I had already loved Tom Petty before that, but after that moment, I was like, you're my favorite. And then shortly after that, it was a few months later that actually Tom Petty passed away too. So it was all these things kind of made that moment even more incredible for me, just in my working life, to say, like, wow, I am so grateful that I got to see that beautiful side of music, that, music brought that moment together and made that happen. And it changed her life and it changed his life and it changed my life. And it was beautiful. So yeah, that's one of my favorite moments from working there. There's so many, but I'll say, like, the nicest people, Neil Young, who I never liked Neil Young's music before, but man, when he came through, I was like, this guy couldn't be nicer, and just hanging out in his sweatpants after the show, like just a, old crony. And James Taylor was the same way, like very gracious. I'll brag a little bit, but Mick Fleetwood did kiss me on the cheek as we stood on the stage staring out at an empty venue. And he's like, can you believe I'm going to play for 20,000 people here later? And that he was so happy. He just gave me a kiss on the cheek. I was like, what world am I living in?
Yeah, that's funny. What an experience. What's great experiences to meet people that are well known all over the world, and that you're promoting them, and the experiences that you had.
Yeah.
And Jora, then you get that uneasy feeling that I have to do something different again. You didn't go to Hong Kong, at least.
Yeah.
So tell us about School of Rock.
Yeah. So actually, it was January 2020. I just had my third baby, and so my kids were at the time where I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn. And I was like, this is a lot of work. And I was working a lot of nights and weekends before that with the concert industry job. And I was driving from Plymouth to St. Paul. So the drive was really far too. And I just was weighing the options of, like, it was back to that, like, really reflection, right? Like, who do I want to be as a parent? And can I be the parent I want to be and still do this job that I love? And if the answer is no, like, what do I want to do then? And what could I possibly find that is going to make me as happy as this role with the Xcel Energy Center in Minnesota Wild, which I had been at for 20 years at that point, like my entire working career. And it goes back to my roots in the golf course. Like, I had always loved, like, that aspect of owning your own business and being in charge of your destiny. And, like, the harder you worked, the more it paid off for you. I mean, even from the time when I was, 4 or 5 years old, we used to go and pick the golf balls out of the field. There's like a cornfield right next to one of the fairways, where if you had a bad shot, their ball would go in the corn. No one's going to go look for it. But when my siblings and I would go find all those balls, we'd shine them up. We'd go set up a little table on, number 5 tee box and sell those golf balls right back to those golfers. And so I'd always had that in me from the time I was little. And I had always dreamed about running my own business. And I had actually talked to my mentor, Kelly McGrath. Like, we'd always kind of like say, what could we do? Like, we got to do something together. Like, let's just, what do you think? And we would dream about it. And then we'd be like, our jobs are awesome. Like, okay, let's go back to reality. But when I was, it was those late nights of, again, like alone time where I was up feeding a baby at 3 a.m. and then again at 5 a.m. and where I just was thinking, like, what do I really love? Okay, I love working with people. I love music. Music has always been a huge part of my life. I married a musician. We had our kids in music school, and so I started Googling, like, different franchises. I'm like, I've never thought about a franchise. Like, the thought of trying to start up my own business was really scary. Franchise was less scary because it was like, oh, somebody's going to help you along the way. Okay, they're going to give you a roadmap. And so I just started Googling, like, most successful franchises, clients that are the happiest with their franchise. And School of Rock kept coming up and kept coming up. And I'm like, what is the School of Rock? And from the second I opened up their website and saw who they were, I'm like, this is for me. It screams Jora. It's, you get to change people's lives through music and you get to run your own business. And I thought, this couldn't be a better fit. And with my husband, so I am not a musician, which I envy musicians. I think they're amazing. I respect them, but I have zero musical talent, which is why I always managed the bands and never was in them. But my husband's a musician. So with the two of us, we said, hey, if I want to do this and take on the actual, like, running the business part and hiring and getting the space ready and working with an architect and, a construction company, like, can you help me as my advisor, with the music side of things and making sure we're hiring the right teachers and buying the right gear. And luckily I have an amazing husband who he still works full time at North Hennepin Community College as an academic advisor, but he's like, let's do it. He's like, you'll be great at it. And so again, that person to give you that, like, that belief in you, it's just a little thing you need to tip you over the edge to say, you're right, I can do this. And so we opened in September of 2021. So it was about a year and a half into the pandemic. And it's been amazing. So it's a performance-based music school. So what's cool about School of Rock is we give students that are ages like 8 to like 88, they take a private lesson once a week, and then we put them into a band right away. And their band rehearses once a week. And then every 4 months they put on a legit live gig. So I'm still working in the live music industry. And then we also offer classes for little kids to really introduce them to music. So the 3 to 7-year-olds, we also have classes for them. And honestly, at least once or twice a week, a parent or a student says something to me about how this is changing their life and how they found their passion or they found their place where they belong. And I say, yep, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I'm doing it on my own, which is also just this beautiful thing, and doing it with my family. And I have 5 nephews that are in the Rock 101 band. My dad is in the adult band. My son is in the rookies program. So it's totally back to like the family business again. Like, the golf course finally closed last year, and now we have this whole new venture where we all get to be together again. So it's truly amazing.
So Jora, just so what we can understand of what you do is, what are the classes and what kind of training do they get?
Yeah, so right away, as soon as you sign up at School of Rock, you'll take a lesson and you're going to learn how to play, Let It Be by the Beatles. From your first lesson, you're going to learn how to play that song. You're also going to learn all the, theory behind music. So you're becoming a really good musician. But then later on that week, you're going to meet with your band. So all people that are your same age and your same skill level, you're all going to play Let It Be together. And you're going to learn how to be a band. You're going to learn about teamwork. You're going to learn about coming together. You're going to learn about, how to grow in your confidence. So really, it's helping build musicians, but it's helping build people into more confident people. And really, what I also love about School of Rock is that, for people that maybe you're not the best at hockey or soccer or whatever sport it is, like, you can be good at music. It just takes practice. There are some people that are really naturally talented, but if you put in the hard work, like you can be a really good musician. So it's this great connector of people and brings people together.
Jora, how did they find School of Rock?
So there's actually 3 schools in Minnesota. There's one in Eden Prairie. They were the 3rd school of rock ever to open. So they're OG. And then there's one in St. Paul. And then our school in Plymouth was the 300th school worldwide to open for School of Rock. So super proud about that. And really, honestly, School of Rocks are all over the world. So whatever city you're in, you Google it, it'll pull up the closest School of Rock location to you. You can always go in for a free lesson and check out their school. That's what we do. We want to make sure that we're a good fit for you. Pop in, what instrument have you always wanted to play, Tom? If you could choose vocals, guitar, bass, drums, or keys.
Oh, come on, drums.
All right. You come on in, we'll give you a free drum lesson. You can sit in with the band, see if it's for you, and I guarantee you'll be hooked from the second you walk in the door, because the energy at the School of Rock locations in Minnesota and across the world is just phenomenal. Like, it's full of music and happiness and fun. And that's kind of my motto here. I say to everybody, like, students all the way up to teachers, when you walk through that door, I want this to be a place where you find joy and where you're happy. And the second it turns into something that it's not where you're finding that, like, we'll figure out a way, like we'll make it. We always want this to be a place where you're coming to find that happiness and to find that joy and to find that connection with people.
What are your handles? Are you on social, on all that?
Yeah, if you schoolofrock.com/Plymouth. Again, wherever you're at, like, School of Rock is so smart, it'll pull up your nearest location and direct you to them. And we're on Facebook as well if you want to follow our adventures. School of Rock /Plymouth.
Folks, our special guest today is Jora Bart. She has such an amazing history on where she's been and what she's done in her career. This has been really fun. But before we're done, now you thought we went personal on you there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well,
no,
you haven't seen anything yet. We're going to do a little transition to our packed questions segment. That's just a few real quick hitters.
Okay.
What's your favorite hobby outside of work, Jora?
Traveling.
Favorite place you've been?
Costa Rica.
Favorite musician or band? You can say Tom Petty now.
I'm not going to say Tom Petty.
Okay.
I do love him. I'm going to say Ryan Adams, not to be confused with Bryan Adams from Canada. Ryan Adams is a singer-songwriter who we actually named our firstborn after.
I'll have to look him up because I can't say I recall. Obviously you have no fears, but I want to know what your biggest fear is, or you have very few fears, maybe is a better way to say it.
Actually, my biggest fear is heights. Like, I always watch Amazing Race as my favorite TV show. And whenever they do a challenge where they have to, like, skydive or jump off, bungee jump, I'm like, I can never do it. I can't. I went in Costa Rica, I did some zip lining and I just freaked out. The guy had to, like, push me to get me down the mountain on the zip line. That's my one. That, and, that's probably about it.
That was my daughter's. And so 2 weeks before she got married, she jumped out of an airplane. It's one way told the guy, you cannot let me break my legs.
Did he push her out or did she jump?
They jumped.
Okay.
I think 14,000 feet, if I remember.
Oh my
correctly.
gosh.
Best home cooked meal.
Actually just made it. My grandma's hot dish. We have a family recipe book with all my aunts and grandma's recipes, and her hot dish is the best.
You know what? That's so Midwest. Oh my gosh.
Totally.
I can't believe it. And Jora, what's the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Ooh, I'm going to have to say that no job is above you. It's advice I got when I was working with the family business and I was scrubbing a toilet. And I remember being so mad as an 8-year-old, and my dad's like, hey, there's no job that's above you or anybody. And frankly, these jobs are the ones that build character. And it's so true. I feel like if you can put yourself in other people's shoes, no matter what, and just kind of see where they're coming from, it just will help you in life, right? To like give you some perspective. And so I'm never too good to do any job. I'll pick up the garbage, I'll clean the toilet, I'll do whatever it takes to get it done. So
Because that's what entrepreneurs do.
yeah, high five.
Great advice. Folks, today our special guest has been Jora Bart. What a great, history you've had of work. I'm looking over this, in the golf business with your family, working like crazy at a young age, earning and learning that work ethic, and then working for the Minnesota Wild, which I could talk about that for days and days. Getting your wild side, going to Hong Kong, trying something different, being by yourself, coming back, working for the Xcel Energy Center and with the concerts, and then now as an entrepreneur with your own business, School of Rock. Congratulations. Thanks so much for being here, Jora.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a true honor, and I'm a huge fan of Duluth Pack, so I really appreciate you letting me be part of this.
Well, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you. Folks, and until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in the outdoors. Outdoors, 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 outdoors.